Today we are going to talk about adding watercolor to our Ted Harrison landscapes. Here you can see I have my crayon finished, and it should be obvious to you the colors that I have used. I did a neutral color on my tree, and then I did complementary colors of green and red. Now we're going to start today with the neutral colors for our tree. In order to make a neutral color, we're going to mix our complementary colors together. So to start that, you're going to need a watercolor brush, and these brushes are a little bit softer bristled. You're going to want a container of water, and you can see right here I'm using a water palette or a mixing palette, and I am just kind of dripping some water into the containers. You can do it two ways. You can just take the brush, fill it with water, and then kind of scrape it on the side like we did with temper paints, or you can also do what I was doing, dip it and then squeeze the water in. That, I guess, just gets you a little bit more, but your water will get cold. Your hands will get wet. Now, here I have my watercolor sets. I am going to be mixing my complementary colors of red and green. Some people might say, well, look, I'm out of yellow. I want to assure you, if there's any color in there, you can still get it out. If this is completely white and empty of color, that is when you would get a new pan. So I will need to add a little bit of water to my green. And I'm going to brush it around a little bit. Notice how my bristles of the brush are only touching the paint. I'm not scrubbing it down and getting the metal part on there. I'm going to take that color and I'm going to add it to one of my containers of water. And I want this one to be pretty dark, so I'm going to do that same process again so that I can get a little bit more color. With watercolors, the more paint you use, the darker or the more intense it will be, as well as, so the opposite would be less color, will be less. And then I'm going to do just a little bit here to this other one. Now I'm cleaning out my brush because I'm going to go to another color. I'm going to use the red now, and I want to make sure that my brush is clean. Same technique, squeeze the water out, make sure the brush is clean itself. You will notice that the water itself gets a little tinted in color, but generally it does not affect the brush itself. If you don't rinse it out at all, then that's going to be causing an issue. So now I'm going to I put about 3 or 4 dabs of green in here. I'm going to put one pretty good dab of red, and when I mix these together, you can see how this green is now turning a little bit darker. So this is becoming a neutral color. I would actually like this to be a little bit more neutral, a little bit less green, a little bit more red, so I'm going to clean out my brush again, add some water, well, maybe not so much water this time, try and sop up the water that's in there so then it will have a little bit more intense paint, and then I mix it in here. And now you can see how it's starting to turn into more of a gray or a brown color. I'm going to do the same process with the second one here. I don't need to do quite as much red because this color is not so intense. And here I have another value as well. So now as I paint, we're going to continue with good tip control. Remember, when you paint, things that are closer to you are brighter in color. So I'm going to take this and I'm just kind of dabbing it next to the edges. And if I've done a good job with my crayon resist, this is going to stay within the shapes that I have drawn. One of the things that you want to be cautious about when you paint with watercolors is that they sometimes run together. If I do 2 colors that are next to each other, and now I'm going to do this one, which is a little bit more green, put it down here, so you can see the value difference here. If I get it too close, it might bleed into the other shape. That doesn't necessarily mean it's bad. If it bothers you, that can easily be fixed, but if it doesn't, and I almost kind of like how the color is a little bit blotchy, so here I'm going to do it on purpose. And I'm even going to go and do so much as take some green right out of the container and add that to it. I don't want it to be completely green, but it makes it a little bit more interesting to look at. Okay, Now if I were to do the areas over here where I have red, let's say I take this area, I would want to be careful about painting this red today because I have wet paint next to it. If I only get this far and then I want to do this space over here with red, which is maybe what I will do, I'll just take some water right out of here and I'm going to just paint it on here. This is a pretty intense red right now, but you can see how the color is sticking only to the paper itself, and it kind of just runs away from the crayon as long as you have done a nice dark color. Okay. We're going to do the same thing with the sky here. I have green, I have all reds, so maybe I'm going to work on the sky now. This is going to be a very intense. This should be the brightest color. It should be have the most paint, the least amount of water. Now what I'm going to want to do is, instead of adding more paint, I'm just going to add water to my brush, and this should lighten it up. Do you see the difference in the color between the two? Now if this seems a little bit too close to the same value, or you are not happy with the color, you can do a quick erase with the paper towel. If I see how I got this color here, if I dab in there and I'm quick about it, I can get it to almost completely come out. If you wait too long, the color will soak into the paper and then you won't be able to fix it. And now I can just go back and take some water, and the color that's in there will spread to fill in those shapes. Just remember, when you're painting, if you colored it with green, one color, you paint it the opposite color. Your trees are going to be neutrals, which you should mix in a palette tray. And then if you want to work directly from here, you can. You can also make values by putting the color in here. So this should be a pretty light red. It's not quite as light as I would like it. So I'm going to add some more water to it here. As I spread this out, I keep adding more water. I'm going to actually get a little bit of that red off of my brush by using the water. Now I have just water, but if you look, when I touch the water with the color, it kind of bleeds together or runs together. Some people really like that about the watercolors. Other people find that a little bit too challenging. Now, to me, it feels like this is a little bit too dark, so I'm going to go in there and just blot some of that color up. You want to be careful to move the paper as you blot so that you're not putting the color back down. And now I will go back and add the water and maybe just a little touch of color to fill that spot in so it's a little bit more consistent. Okay.